Greetings folks, and welcome to the Electromaker podcast. This is the audio version of the midweek roundup I make of all things maker and embedded and lovely for Electromaker.io. The full show can be found on YouTube with, of course, the visual element to everything I will be talking about, and if you'd like to find that, it's in the show notes of this episode, along with direct links to everything I do talk about. Now, one of the things that I talk about today is clearly one of my favorite things that I've talked about in a while, and it does have somewhat of a visual element to it. That is the Dodapan. That is a wonderful, completely open source synthesizer and MIDI controller that combines a lot of very interesting elements into what is a very nice standalone synth with expressive capacitive touch pads as their controller. We also look at some bleeding edge research into power over skin, which is one of the potential ways of powering those difficult to keep powered IoT devices, especially in things like medicine, for example. And we also delve into our product of the week, which is Espressif's ESP32-S3-Box-3B, which is a very long designation and not very catchy for something which is a really quite awesome device. It sits right in the middle of everything in that it's good for engineers and makers. It is something that is almost a finished product in and of itself, but it's also a development kit. In short, an ESP32 dev kit with a touchscreen, dual microphones, a speaker, and lots of ways to add to it. So if you ever wanted to build your own Alexa, this is a good one to look at. And of course, we will be giving one away too. So with all of that to get through, I suggest we get on with the show. But just before we do, a couple of quick bits of business. First, we are going to be at the Electronica conference in Munich next week. I'll be traveling down there on Monday, so 3 days after I'm recording this, and we'll be there from Tuesday through till Thursday. So if you are an exhibitor there and you want us to visit your stand, please do get in touch whichever way you want to, via social media or via electromaker.io at the contact link there. And if there's anyone you as the podcast audience would like me to go and visit and see what they're up to, please do let me know. We always do drop by the bigger names like Arduino and Raspberry Pi, and then generally just wander around and see what else looks good. We do have some appointments actually in place already to show off some of the newer tech, and we've done that always over the years. Everything from really inventive powerless NFC devices through to just shaving off that little bit of crucial extra power or time from development for various things. So do let me know if there's anything you would like to see from there. We will be on the floor pretty much all day, every day for most of the week. And the second part is, of course, the Electromaker podcast is sponsored by us. We have our own shop at electromaker.io/shop. If you're interested in finding anything that pertains to this episode, you will probably find it there. So with all of that said, let's get on with this week's show. We are going to start this week's show by looking at the latest video from the Future Interfaces group from Carnegie Mellon University. Now, this is a group of people who, as the name suggests, are looking into ways that we can interface with technology in the future. And one of the biggest gets, one of the biggest wants, as it were, for technology in the future and research is the way that we power devices. Because the way that, whether you're a hobbyist or whether you're in the industry, the less power that your device can use, the better, of course. But there's the other side of it, which is where do you draw that power from? Most things these days either have to have their own small lithium pack of batteries in them and a battery charging circuit and everything that comes with that, or it has to harvest energy from the world around it, but energy harvesting is still something that is an incomplete science. There are very few devices that require no charging whatsoever. So the other options are, well, wireless technology is of course one of them, but there is a sort of middle ground, and that is power over skin. Now, I will be linking this Hackaday article from Navar Bartz because that's where I discovered this first. But this links out to everything important. The video from the Future Interfaces group can be found just here, and we'll go on to that in just a moment. And if you follow the link out in the first part of the article here, it takes you to the Future Interfaces group site where you can get the PDF paper if you are indeed signed into the browser that you're using. I'm not signed in this one because recording for the show, etc. Now, the video is only 2 minutes long, and I would suggest absolutely going and watching it. It's fascinating. It gives a quick voiceover, goes into some of the more technical details as to exactly how they're achieving it, but I wanted to show this small section here because it really outlines exactly what's happening. So here we have someone who has a ring on their finger, and I do appreciate it's kind of bulky. This is experimental research, and as you can see, that LED is flashing. However, the power source is down here on the arm. This is where the power is going in. It's being transmitted along the skin, and it is powering that little ring. However, for a far more conclusive view of what's happening, this is a calculator which does not have its own battery source or a solar panel. They're holding it, and it is powering it. Now, these are, of course, very small steps, but there's a few other examples here, and again, this is showing the necessary this is showing the potential practicality of it. Using the power from a VR headset, for example, transmitting that power all the way through the skin down into the fingers, and it is capacitive. So this is someone putting a phone in their pocket, and then they have power running over their skin. Now, predictably, the comments on the Hackaday article are full of people saying this may or may not give you cancer, there's issues with it for this and that. This is right on the edge, bleeding edge research of what may be possible at some point. But since power and the way we power devices is one of the biggest questions about any kind of development at this point, it is something that is definitely very interesting, and I'm very glad that people are doing research of this type. And of course, this is the things that they've hacked together in the lab in order to actually make proof of concepts. I don't think anyone is going to be wearing a smart ring with a huge inductor, is that on the side? And that's absolutely fine. I do think this is one of the coolest examples of it, however. This is a little microcontroller which is being used as a wireless joystick. So it can give enough power to power a Bluetooth low energy microcontroller, which is very interesting indeed. But as I've previously mentioned earlier in this section, if you would like to find out more about it, you can get the paper just here. The Future Interfaces Lab is something that we talked about several times on the show, and I do find it really quite interesting. The last time that we heard from them, I believe, we were looking at SynJets, which are their, as it says, expressive, scalable, mid-air haptics with synthetic jets, which is a fascinating video in and of itself. We covered it in an earlier show. I'll link that there if you'd like to hear me talk about it. Or once again, you can just go and watch the 4-minute video, which goes through really interesting ways of using synthetic jets in a very small enough to fit in a keyboard form factor. The Future Interfaces group are doing truly fascinating things, and I find this in a way almost more interesting than when this ends up in the technology that we use, because by that point it just becomes normal. It's that weird thing that happens with technology where something is wild, on the edge of science, maybe even slightly magical seeming, and then it's just normal a short time later. And this is how this stuff happens. Yes, there are huge amounts of research dollars going into companies doing this behind closed doors, but there's a lot of people who are just in universities researching ways, kind of saying, hey, how about we try and do this but that way, and coming up with these wonderful ideas. So yes, I will leave a link to this in the description of this video, and if there are any other projects like this that you see when you're scrolling, please do let me know. You can put them in our Discord server, or you can just drop me an email at ian@electromaker.io if you find it, because this kind of stuff that's right on the bleeding edge really does make me excited, especially when it comes to things like power delivery, because at some point there's going to be some kind of potential for wireless power delivery, which is the big get that everybody wants, in a usable form. And when that happens, I feel like things are going to get really quite exciting. But yes, anyway, that's just me being a futurist for a second there. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk about our latest product of the week, which is the ESP32-S3-Box-3B. And I know that's quite a long name, but it is actually an amazing little device that can do a lot of different stuff. But before we get onto that, we need to announce the winner of the Re-Speaker 2 Mics hat giveaway that we started on the last Electromaker show. Now, just a quick recap for those of you that may not have seen that. The 2 Mics hat is, what it says on the tin, it is a hat that works with any 40-pin device. So Raspberry Pi is obviously the main target here. It'll work with the Raspberry Pi 0 or the Raspberry Pi 2, 3 or 4 or 5, but it will work with a variety of other devices like the NVIDIA Jetson Nano, for example. Some of the example code for it is for that board. But it also is actually quite a widely usable device beyond the 2 microphone array. It's obviously aiming towards the idea of home assistance. They use 2 microphones to get directional audio and also to be able to cancel out audio coming out of a nearby speaker so they can hear your voice over music, for example. But the hat itself also has an amplifier for a speaker on board and a very powerful audio codec that makes it very useful for a variety of things. And if you are interested in finding out more about it, there's a link under this video to the Product of the Week blog and everything that we did around it. And yeah, it's a really nice bit of kit. But as I mentioned, it is time for us to announce the winner of that giveaway. And our winner chosen at random is Jurassic Jenkins, who says, I wish to add TTS/STT for conversational AI on my Pi 5 with Halo 8L running Ollama 3B by Meta. Those are definitely some words that I understand and some words that I do not. All jokes aside, that's a very cool use case for it, and I think one of the main use cases for it. The idea is that this allows you to create a hardware solution similar to the kind of hardware you find in conversational assistants, but allows you to do it in a DIY fashion. And Jurassic Jenkins, when you do start putting that together, please do document that on the Electromaker Project Hub. I would love to show that on the show to show people how they can make their own conversational AIs without necessarily having to use the cloud solutions that are available to them. I also think in that sentence I said the word show far too many times. Anyway, congratulations to you. Thank you to everyone else who entered, but it is now time for us to move on to our current product of the week. Yes, our product of the week from Espressif is the ESP32-S3-Box-3B. Now, the ESP32-S3, as we've talked about in the past, is a super powerful microcontroller from Espressif. It is more powerful than the previous ones in general, but also for a key reason, which we'll get onto in a moment. It also makes it perfect for this wonderful little box. And a wonderful little box it is. If you see it in the background here of the video that Robin has made, it is a standalone box that you can hold in your hand or mount on a wall, but it also comes with a mount as well. Sorry, not a mount, a baseboard as well. As you can see, it can stand in here. And the box itself, as well as housing the microcontroller and the touchscreen that you can see, it also has a speaker in it and dual microphones, which is an interesting coincidence. Our last two product of the weeks now have been dual microphone products. The difference being that this is targeting a microcontroller, albeit a very powerful one, rather than a module that is supposed to attach to a single board computer or something similar. And Espressif seem to have really hit the nail on the head here for a product that fits nicely into the maker world and has code examples that are understandable to people like me, for example, but also in the more engineering side of things where people want to prototype things very quickly, because this has a number of desirable features. Not only the things that I've mentioned that are built into it, but if we skip to the right part of the video, you'll see there's a bunch of add-ons for it as well. On the top here, this is just an RGB LED add-on, but this here is a breadboard add-on. So you can slot this into a breadboard and then drop it in on the top so you can actually prototype your circuits that work with it. There's the base we've already talked about, and there's also a bracket which allows you to attach it to the wall and also attach other things to it, as well as a sensor board add-on for adding different kinds of sensors in as well. However, the thing itself is designed for, yes, prototyping, but also to kind of be its own thing. If you wanted to run this as some kind of localized voice assistant, for example, it has a couple of the features you find in assistants also. Things like a mute button for muting the microphone if you don't want it to pick up wake words. And it is sort of supposed to be, again, in that position where it's between two worlds. You could deploy this as a thing in and of itself, or you could just use it to prototype something else. I think they really are trying to kind of hit as many boxes as possible, no pun intended, and whereas that can sometimes be a bit of a bad thing, throwing everything into one kind of device, it seems like this one is balanced rather well. However, as always, I'm not really the one who's going to give you the full rundown on that. Robin has come up with a wonderful video for this as part of the Electromaker team that make the Product of the Week videos, and there's also a blog post going through all of it as well, which is what I'm looking at here. And one of the reasons I wanted to show you the blog post side of it today as well is that if you actually get to this Product of the Week via the blog and are wondering how to enter the contest, any YouTube video that is embedded into a blog like this, if you just click on the actual title of the video, it will take you to the video on YouTube, and right down under here is the pinned comment that tells you how to enter the contest. And as always, entering is incredibly simple. As the pinned comment above me says, you can enter this simply by leaving the hashtag Espressif and also telling us exactly what you would make if you did win it. Now, the winner will be chosen on the next Electromaker Show at random. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't tell us what you would build with it. That's just something that I requested, frankly. I really love reading everyone's ideas for devices and dev kits and modules and components. It's one of my favorite things, especially as someone who has limited time to work on my own prototypes of stuff. At the end of the day, I do this job because I love it and I do love talking about this stuff, but really I'd love to have a lot more time for development. But I mean, I'm an enthusiast when it comes to microcontrollers, but my job is to talk about them. And then the next step down on the ladder from that is I'm a musician, so the spare time that I have, a lot of it is putting into trying to finish music. So this is sort of me vicariously living through other people's ideas. I'll be the very first to admit that. But yes, whether you want to go and watch the product of the week video or just have a look through the blog, this is definitely a very interesting device, and I'm really into the idea of companies putting out these all-in-one boxes that allow you to do different kinds of development. I'm a big fan of just little development boards that are just the bare minimum to get you started, but having a few components that are already in place that essentially are a full device just waiting for you to give it a brain is something that I also very much appreciate. There's several ESP32 based touchscreens alone that sort of do that as well, that we've talked about on the show in the past. But this one does seem to certainly be a little bit special to me. And if it is something that you are interested in, yes, do go and enter the giveaway. But under this particular video, I'm also very interested to hear what your favorite kind of development kits are. Obviously, many of us love the ESP32 from Espressif, and with good reason. It has sort of taken over the makersphere as the go-to chip because of its high availability. It's very cheap. It's a very, very good piece of hardware. But do you prefer getting a bare bones development board and starting from scratch and working up from there, or do you like getting these more fully completed, fleshed out kits so you can actually use the things that are already put together and solely focus on the software side of development? Please do let me know in the comments below. And once again, do enter the giveaway. That giveaway will run for around about 2 weeks. I'll make sure there's a date on the pinned comment so you know when the giveaway ends. Now, if any viewer of the Electromaker Show was to say, Ian, you prioritize DIY music making projects far too often, DIY synthesizers or anything to do with microcontrollers making sound, yeah, I'd be the first to agree. I try my best to cover things that everyone would be interested in on this show, whether you're a hobbyist or part of the industry, but I have to admit, music's my history. I'm drawn to that kind of stuff like a moth to the flame. But this, I think, is justified. This wonderful project on the Electromaker Project Hub is called DodePan, and it is essentially a pared down idea of a hand pan. Now, the hand pan, if you're not familiar with it, is a large sort of inverted inverted steel drum that you hit with your hands, and you hit it in different places to get different sounds. And it's got an almost haunting but very beautiful sound to it. This is a sort of scaled down version of that with capacitive touch pads as the input. But not only is this something that is a MIDI controller that allows you to control other MIDI instruments, therefore giving you a wide gamut of almost any kind of sound you could make with it, this is a standalone synthesizer, and best of all, it is using the new Raspberry Pi Pico 2 as its brain. So I'll give a high-level overview of it, because I could spend a very long time talking about why I think this is very clever and why I really would like to build one of them myself for various reasons, but let's just do the cliff notes to begin with. This, as I mentioned, is an array of capacitive touch pads, each one allowing you to touch them to create trigger points, but of course they are capacitive touch pads, so the way that you touch them will add expression as well. If you touch it very lightly with the tip of your finger, you're going to get a different signal going to the microcontroller than if you put your full finger over it and push down. The more you push down, the more you will cover the actual end where the capacitive touch sensing happens. So in a way, you get this quasi-touch sensitivity to it, where the harder you press, the more sound you will get out of it. The case also, as you can see, houses a little speaker in it. That's what the speaker grill is for. Not a potentiometer, a rotary encoder here and a screen which allows you to choose different things, both in terms of MIDI and in terms of synthesis. Now, there is a video by the creator further down this page. We're going to come onto that in just a moment. And there's also a bunch of software features that I haven't even talked about yet, but I just want to spend a moment talking about the hardware. As you can see while looking inside the box, this isn't just a microcontroller attached to a few capacitive touchpads that's spitting out MIDI over USB. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that would make a wonderful, very bare bones MIDI controller, and something that I think would be a wonderful project in and of itself. But this is a completely open hardware project, so there's nothing stopping you from taking a little bit of this and doing that. But why would you, when you realize that this is not only a standalone synthesizer and sequencer, it is one that has its own battery management, so it is portable, and it also has a motion sensor in it. The 9-axis IMU allows you to use tilt and pan to affect things like pitch bending and filter cutoff, and that is on top of the expression you get from the capacitive touch sensors alone. So yes, having spent a little time on the hardware side of it, and the hardware schematic is available here. And by the way, it's not DodePan, it's DodePan, and I knew this before recording this section, and I still called it DodePan. But it even says it here in the top of the project that it is 12 in Greek. It's played by tapping on its 12 dodeca in Greek capacitive metal pads. Yes, the DodePan. 6-sided shape, 12 capacitive touch pads. And I've talked about the hardware side of it, and it is a completely open hardware project. The 3D printer designs are open hardware as well, although if you don't have access to a 3D printer, there's nothing to stop you putting this into any other kind of box. All you need is for the actual capacitive touch sensors to be made of the correct material in order to work. But now I can't think of a better time to move on to the video from the creator, Turi Skandura, and give you a quick run through of some of its features. I'm not going to play you the video in full. Firstly, it's 4 minutes and 20 seconds long, which is too long to fit into this show. But secondly, I really want you to go and watch the video from the creator themselves. 4 minutes and 20 seconds is not very long, and it covers quite briefly everything you need to know about this box, which packs a hell of a lot in for a completely open source, completely open hardware project just made by someone who is sharing it for free.
This is the second iteration of Dodepan, a portable musical instrument and MIDI controller that I've been working on. This instrument has MIDI output functionality, so it can be connected to a music software on a computer or to another digital instrument to control them. Another new feature is the sequence looper, which can record and replay notes. It works together with a diatonic transport selector, which transposes the recording around the current scale. That's right, Dodepan is not for sale, it's an open source project that makers and thinkers can recreate and build on top of.
And I think the key phrase to take from this is that, as was mentioned in the last video clip I showed you, this is something that's been created as an open hardware and software project. It is not for sale. But the Dodepan is absolutely something that could be justified to be sold, and actually for quite a decent amount of money. There are a lot of boutique synths and pedals out there that cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am the owner of a few potentially pricey items that I don't necessarily need. But this being an open source project that anyone can have access to is something that really appeals to me, and I'm sure people will be excited to see a sort of open source but still hobby end, at least when it comes to the hardware side of things, project that uses a Raspberry Pi Pico 2. And the other thing I like about it is that it has been designed in quite a clever way too. While there is a custom PCB inside here where it has been 3D printed at home, there'll be nothing to stop you getting all of these separate modules for this and putting this together in your own way, shape or form. As I previously mentioned in this section, as long as you get the capacitive touch points right, and how to do that is covered in the build guide for this, you could basically put this together on a breadboard and have a fully functional MIDI sequencer, MIDI controller, synthesizer and sequencer all in one, with all of the wonderful software side of things that Turi has put into this. I hope, Turi, that I pronounced your name correctly through this section. I did have to re-record a fair chunk of this because I was calling you Yuri. I didn't even need to tell you that because I edited it out anyway. This is just the way I work, I suppose. Anyhow, I probably spent more time on that than I should have done, but I am very excited about this particular project. If you'd like to find out more about Dodepan, I will leave a link to this under the video as always, and you can head there. And if you click on the YouTube video out here, you can also head to Turi's YouTube channel, and you can support them and follow them there for updates on the project too. Now, in the last two shows, we talked about new products from Raspberry Pi, and it doesn't seem like they're slowing down. For the longest time, they've obviously been putting out lots of different kinds of single-board computers, and more recently, microcontrollers and development boards, but it seems like they're really trying to close in and have their entire set of accessories that are all Raspberry Pi branded. The most recent one being the Raspberry Pi USB 3 hub. It is $12. I'm not really going to go into any more detail than that. I don't find USB hubs necessarily the most exciting things in the world. They are very useful, and now you can get a Raspberry Pi branded one if you would like. The Touch Display 2, however, is now on sale for $60, and this one is a little bit more interesting. So first, it has a higher pixel resolution. Like it says, it has a 720 by 1280 pixel resolution, but the thing I find more interesting about it is the fact that it has this slimmer form factor. This thing is really quite slim. It is a 7-inch diagonal display. It is 88 by 155 millimeters. You'd think actually that they would talk about how slim it is in the specs, given that's one of the big things. But here's the part that I find quite exciting about it. They've completely redesigned the way that they've done it. It's not just a display with a separate driver board. The driver is built into the display now, which means that the entire thing is a lot thinner. And there's something about this that I like. It does seem very, very clean. You have the Raspberry Pi attached onto the back, and then you just have the ribbon cable going into the display, and that is that. Very neat and compact. And yes, there's a million and one reasons why you might want a small, decent resolution touch display for your Raspberry Raspberry Pi. Maybe just use it as somewhat of a tablet to hold yourself. Maybe you want to have it as some kind of a kiosk. Maybe you want to use it as part of your home assistant setup. There's numerous reasons why you might want to do that. And as I say, it is now available for $60. And you can find out more about it by going to the link in the description, where, of course, you can actually go and find a local dealer that will sell you one. Oh, another quick note I may have forgot to mention. In terms of the way that it attaches to the board, of course you have the ribbon cable going to the display output, but other than that you just have this one little clip here that goes to the GPIO ports on the Raspberry Pi, and it powers it directly from the Pi itself, which is just another nice little touch. Now we're going to briefly touch on something that we would never usually talk about in the Electromaker Show. This is Bad Obsession Motorsport, and this is a YouTube channel which is all to do with cars and doing up old cars and getting into the engineering of it all. And you can probably tell by the way I'm speaking, I'm not really a car person. My knowledge of cars is actually the opposite of this in a way, because I write about modern automotive embedded systems sometimes as one of the things that I do. So I'm aware of the way things are now, but this is something completely different. They're taking an Austin Mini GT4 and they're trying to restore it. But the reason that this grabbed my attention is that they have taken a really novel approach to making the traces on a circuit board. So to try and keep this brief, I'm just going to kind of skip into the part of the video where they're talking about all of this. Essentially, all of the gauges that are in the car are very old and are very inaccurate, and they want to sort of update them without updating them. The idea being that they want to still use the old componentry that was in the dashboard, but update the circuitry in the background. And so they said, okay, well, they'll cut a circuit board which fits the size of the original plate behind it, and then they will use their own components in order to put it all together, which is what they did. They cut the circuit board, they drilled it through, they made solder pads for all of it, and then they realized that they had this huge circuit without any traces on the board, and they didn't send off for it to be done. I'm sure it's something that they probably could have done if they'd found a fabrication house, but they wanted to do it all in-house. Long story short, they decided to come up with their own way of laying down solder in solder traces, and for their particular use case, their solution was really ingenious. So some of you may have already realized where this is going. They've created their circuit board here, but they don't have any traces on it. And recently we talked about Stephen Hawes and Lumen PNP and the way of trying to put SMT components on a board without solder paste. This is kind of the opposite problem. They have all of the points they need, they just don't have any solder traces. And some of you may have already sort of jumped ahead and realized where this is going. Despite this not really being their field, they noticed that the melting point of plastic in a 3D printer is not dissimilar to the melting point of solder, and for their particular use case, using a 3D printer to lay down the solder traces is actually a really good idea. The thing that is amazing about this is not just the way that they thought of doing it, but the fact that they managed to get it working so well so that all the solder adhered to the board. Now, this is just a very small section of a 1 hour long video, and I'm going to leave it here because I want to move on to another very similar project. But I would like to point out just a couple of things. This is an hour long episode about doing this Austin Mini GT4 rebuild. This is episode 39. I would just like to point out to you that the first episode of this was 11 years ago. This is a legendarily long YouTube series, and despite not necessarily being much of a car person, just from what I've seen of this and the way that they speak to the camera and the obvious enjoyment and enthusiasm and real commitment they have to this, I'm going to do the dive and try and slowly work through it all and actually watch this, because yeah, it's just a really wonderful thing, and I'm really glad that my friend who is very car based but knows that I do this job pointed this out to me, because it is fascinating. However, it did make me think, this can't be the first time someone's tried to do something, right? Kind of like this. And it made me find something else which is very similar, but actually maybe a little more practical for someone like us. Someone like us? Someone like me, someone like you. And that is the soldering robot, which, as it says here, the motivation is from having to solder the same one over and over again. As I've spent hours soldering while my 3D printer was working on another project, my laziness decided to let the machine do the job. And some of you, again, may have already seen where this is going, although there's a slight difference here. Whereas the Project Binky guys, I didn't even show it because I wanted to keep it very brief, they completely made a custom rig for printing solder. This is just using a 3D printer with a custom head that has been printed that will hold a TS100 soldering iron. Sorry, T100 is a Terminator. A TS100 soldering iron, and feeds the solder into it. And this is basically just a very short video going over all the different ways that it could work. So, controlled via Octoprint and a Raspberry Pi, surprisingly easy to set up, and after not even 5 hours, it is alive. Once again, I'm going to skip slightly further into the video so you can see it in action. This is it working, I think speeded up, but you can still see exactly how it is working. Yeah, much speeded up. But if you're working with proto board, or you're having to put a lot of boards together for whatever reason, and it is, once again, through hole, this might be a nice solution for you. And call me naive, but is there any reason why you couldn't do a similar sort of thing to this using solder paste? I may be completely naive saying this. I have not enough experience to know if that is the case. Interestingly, by the way, if you may have already noticed, this is the OpenScan YouTube channel. OpenScan is something we covered on the Electromaker Show quite a while ago. This is a way of scanning things and then reprinting them. It basically allows you to copy 3D prints. A really fascinating project. And if you're interested in it or the bracket that was created for this, because I mean, those soldering irons are really quite well known. In fact, yeah, I was just about to say, I think a lot of people got these when they first came out. I have one sitting right in front of me on my desk. It is one of a few soldering irons I own, but the reason it's here is because literally I just plug in a power thing and I can solder right here at my desk when I feel the inclination to. And this hand will allow you to turn it into an automatic soldering machine, which is quite an exciting thing. If you're interested in any of these things, I will be linking this video in the description, and in there is where you can get a link to the OpenScan blog, and also a link to the Thingiverse project, which has the STL in order to make your own bracket to attach it to a 3D printer. Now, between the stuff I talked about with Stephen Hawes last week and the stuff I talked about this week, I'm sure there's a whole host of different automated ways to put things together with soldering that I am missing. And as always, I'm very interested to hear if you yourself have come up with something like this, or you've seen something awesome and you think is worth attention. Whether it ends up on the show or not, it's something that I would be personally interested in, just because, once again, I love seeing this kind of stuff. It brings me a lot of joy. But yes, if you are interested in either of those things, links in the description. That was our podcast for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your continued support. I'm always happy to hear feedback about things that you liked or did not like from the show, and you can get in touch with me via our Discord server. You can find a link to that in the show notes. And I will be probably coming to you from Electronica the next time I record a podcast, so it might sound a little different. I'll be in a hotel room, I should think. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, if there's anything you would like to see from Electronica, please do get in touch with us and let us know. Similarly, if you are going to be there, get in touch and we will pop by and say hi. And once again, electromaker.io/shop is our shop, and it supports us, unsurprisingly, directly. So if you're looking for anything from the first Arduino kit to give as a Christmas gift through to something very specific, or 10,000 of something even more specific for your business, do have a quick look. The links at the top of the shop page will put you directly in touch with our commerce team if there's something you're not seeing on the site. There are some things that it doesn't necessarily make that much sense to list. So we may be able to help you out even if you do not see it there. But for now, I look forward to chatting to you next. Have a fun, safe and creative week. Take care.